Right, I've got another guest in front of me today, Marc Craig, someone that I've got to know over the years. In actual fact, I remember the first person who introduced me to you, a good friend of mine called Alfie. So yes. I want to shout out Alfie. Thank you very much for connecting us. Offline, I was saying to you, Marc, that we've been in the art space now since 2014, and we found ourselves coming into it by chance. We're known for being the Richard Hamilton key advisor. We've dealt on his market, since 2014 or just before that. But as I mentioned to you, my sort of quest that I'm doing is I'm interviewing people from America, also British artists, people that I feel are in the ecosystem of street art, urban art, graffiti, etc. And obviously I've got to know you over the years and I adore your work and I think you're a great guy, and I wanted to get you onto the podcast to talk to you about your inspiration, how your art has evolved, why you got into the art market and that kind of stuff. So first and foremost, thank you for coming on board.
You're welcome.
So, I mean, let's talk about your art then. For those who haven't seen your art, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as a doodlesque appreciation of surfaces. So any surface, whether it be a big mural space, a big wall space, or it could be I've done clothing, anything that I can doodle on. And it's an unconscious language of symbols that is constantly evolving, that adds together and creates this visionary adventure, a journey.
I still haven't got one of your pieces personally. Oh, I have. I actually got the dark one.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute.
But the one the style I do like as well, which I've grown to adore even more over the years, is kind of like the more kind of, I would call it more like pop art type style.
Yes.
And I think when I first ever met you and I was looking at the work, I said it reminds me a little bit like Keith Haring, but then with a bit of like Andy Warhol affiliated to it. So would you say those type of artists have inspired you in some ways?
So initially, before all that, my inspiration was B-movies, anything to do with Hammer horror, sci-fis, black and white sci-fis, Plan 9 from Outer Space, all the B-movie crappy films that I adored. They had amazing monsters, amazing aliens, and you can actually see that in all my doodles, that subconscious appreciation of all thing B-movie. I still love B-movies. And then, of course, ultimately, as I went into my art education, I realized that I wasn't on my own. There were many artists out there that had this kind of process where they absorbed pulp culture and it all amalgamated and came together to create this visual language. Keith Haring is a really good example, but there are many examples that inspired me and made me realize I was in really good company. So it's an unconscious language that is actually quite international, but everybody has it. It's almost like a spoken language. You all have different ways of communicating.
Yeah.
But, there is this common denominator in that language. Words mean the same sort of thing. And some words don't mean the same. So it's the same with the symbols.
As you just mentioned, I'm very privileged to own one of your Dark Marc pieces. And I think it was the first time when I went to your studio.
That's right.
Where I discovered them. And I, your typical style, I would say, like I said, reminded me of Keith Haring, a little bit of Andy Warhol in now, and there's definitely a couple other sort of artists I can recognise. But then this style, the dark side of what you do, is a bit like the Jean-Michel Basquiat stuff.
Yes.
And I want to come on to the bit where I think when you were telling me about the reason why you do it is because every so often, like all humans, we go into sometimes the dark kind of, I know, not the depression, but sometimes where you're challenging yourself, mentally. And I think it's quite a good conversation to have at the moment because mental health is coming to the forefront of, the media, publicity. There's a lot of charities and there's a lot of wellness platforms, including one I'm a part of, which is called Mimboso, which is talking about mental health. And I think, especially for men, we don't talk about it enough. So would you say it was a bit more therapy, making the Dark Marc kind of art, or is it just something that you do every so often?
So essentially, and a lot of artists go through this process of recognizing different energies within them. You have a prevalent energy, whatever that is, that kind of a surface level. But if you really look at artists' artwork, you can see an underlying energy, most psychological kind of lineage would call it the shadow. And that is dark Marc. It's the stuff that gets pushed down or is uncomfortable to deal with, or is generally unpredictable. It's like a hot potato in your hands. What I realized about 4 or 5 years ago, is that suppressing this energy was not useful. It was actually quite detrimental. And it had a language, it had something to say. So I started indulging it. I was still doing my murals. Here's the colorful doodle stuff, fantastic. But on the side, there was this raw maverick, couldn't give two shits how it looked and who liked it or who didn't like it. It was so liberated, it needed to be freed. And when I started that process, I realized that actually there was something really special here, but it was an energy that I had to really respect. So I haven't really shown it because I haven't really got to know it. And it's me getting to know me in a much more deeper level. The one that you got was actually like, I keep getting bursts of dark Marc. So recently it's all been about, all the doodle stuff, but usually at 3 o'clock in the morning, one day it's always 3 o'clock. And I thought I was unique in this, but apparently a lot of artists get woken up either at 3 o'clock or 3:33 and dark Marc wants to play. He doesn't do normal time zones. He does 3 o'clock in the morning, and I have to grab the brush and I have to start drawing or start painting or whatever. And the stuff that comes out is it literally just blows me away. My doodle stuff blows me away, but that is it's like easy listening. It's comfortable, but this stuff is much more dynamic. And what I'm trying to do is to bring these two energies together. At the moment, it's like oil and water. They're kind of like, not sure. Yeah. But bringing those two elements together, reconciling my positive nature and my negative nature to have more integrity as an artist. I love what I do. All the usual doodle stuff that people know me for. I'm really lucky, and I love the appreciation that people give me. But the dark Marc stuff is far more juicy. It's got more oomph to it. But it's very difficult to present it in a way that means that it's doing it justice, but also in a way that people understand it. Because technically, I don't understand it at the moment. So I'm trying to get. When you look at the Hamiltons, this reminds me of it. When I look at these images that you got in your studio here in Soho, I'm like, I know this language, I know, but I haven't really got to grips with it yet. But the stuff I do is just blows me away every time. It's not me painting, by the way. It's not me drawing. I literally plug into something much more bigger than me. And
it's like you're being possessed almost.
Absolutely. Well, possessed, or it's like a conduit.
Like inspired, possessed,
Absolutely. So for example, and this works for both the doodle and the dark Marc stuff. If I literally let go of the outcome and just switch off to this need to be perfect, this need to produce something that's going to earn loads of money, whatever. If I put my ego to one side, the door of opportunity opens and the magic starts to happen. The moment I switch my head back on, it disappears. And it goes for either me doing the doodling. I did this big, massive 4-story mural recently, and they said, "Oh, can you do a design?" And I just cringed because I can do you a design, but I'm telling you now, this is not what it's going to look like, because it literally happens in the moment.
Yeah.
But again, I literally I was scared of heights. Still went up this scissor lift thing. Went up 4 stories, got the can, took a deep breath, relaxed my body, and then I watched my hand start doing this amazing, beautiful doodle that I have no idea where it comes from, but it just appeared, and I was really lucky. I'm always lucky when it works. It's never not worked, but the moment I start thinking, oh, maybe if I do this. Have you ever heard of the artists that go, I thought it was finished, but I thought if I do one more little stroke, that's never do the last stroke, because it will literally kill your artwork. I'm pretty sure most artists go through that.
I've heard that so many times, because the moment they add something to it, then they want to add something to that. I mean, Hamilton's quite known for, used to be known for doing that, because I think even when I was speaking to Andy Van Morbida, who is, the old Richard Hamilton sort of agent, dealer, and now owns the Richard Hamilton IP. I used to watch videos of Andy and him chatting to each other, and Andy was like, "Look, this is clearly finished," and Hamilton was like, "No, it's not finished," and he said, "No, it is." And then as he was adding to it, he was destroying the piece.
The line between letting go and perfection is really thin.
Yeah,
and I've learned through the years to trust, intuitively trust, when whatever the creative God's nature, whatever you want to call it, goes, you're done. It's finished.
Yeah.
I still potentially could cross that line though. And I know as soon as I'm putting that, I can watch my hand going up and like, Mark, you don't want to do this. And then inevitably, if I do it, I'm like, well, I usually just go over it.
Yeah.
Straight away, I'm like, you've lost the painting.
Yeah.
So,
when Alfie introduced me to you, his description is Mark does a lot of murals. And he's also done some big collaborations, and he's been on, TV, I think BBC, etc. I think when I was researching, you done something with Guinness as well. Is that right?
So the Guinness thing, the Nescafe thing, like all the wonderful opportunities I've had, comes from Leek Street, and you obviously know Leek Street. You've been down there.
Well, Hamilton done a show down there in 2018, not with us, with another organisation, but they done a big Leek Street tunnel project down there, and it was fantastic.
So Leek Street is essentially, and following on from what we were just saying about that, that letting go element. It is the best place to see art in London, without a shadow of a doubt, as far as I'm concerned. It is the most rawest representation
Waterloo, right?
Underneath Waterloo Station. Yeah. It was where Banksy did the Cannes Festival. And then after that, there was this weird thing happened where it became a free space, where you could go down and you can spray, or you can do whatever you wanted, really. And so over time, what happens, if you look at each end of the tunnel, between each end of the tunnel is this raw creativity off the scale. And because it's raw, it's free, it attracts people to it, and it attracts big names. So, for example, the Nescafe one was the really good example. I was there finishing off a mural, and the couple came up to me and said, "Oh, are you an artist?" They literally asked. It's so obvious. I've got a can in my hand, and they're like, "Are you an artist?" I got asked that so many times. So I said, "Yes, I am." They asked, "Are you allowed to do this?" Yes, obviously, because I'm doing it. And then I sort of, I heard myself say, "Here, I've finished the mural, have some cans." So off they wandered, sprayed around like two kids. It's a joyous, wonderful place to be. Then they came back and she said, "I work for Nescafe." And this kind of osmosis of raw creative energy to defined creative energy is what Leek Street's all about. And yet I continue to go back. The canvas changes every single day. I'm lucky because I've stuck mine on the ceiling, but the sheer dynamic creative energy is untamable. And if you accept that, it constantly gives to you. It constantly gives, and that's what it does beyond Leek Street. Creative energy gives if you give to it, if you share of it.
Yeah.
So these guys literally said, "Oh, we're doing the London Coffee Festival. Can you do a mural for that? Can you do?" And then suddenly I was live, did a live mural, and then I ended up doing their coffee machines at WH Smith's, and if you look at the coffee machines, it's got my design on.
Wow.
Purely because I gave that energy back in that moment, going, "Here, have a can." That's all I did.
Yeah.
But that energy, that positive energy, never see it. Part of me still does not understand it, but the more you give, the more you get back.
Definitely.
It's as simple as that.
Giving value.
Yeah. Without question. Yeah. So the Guinness thing, exactly the same. That was, me giving back and doing like free kind of murals and whatever, and doing community stuff. And then suddenly I got a message saying, "We're doing a Instagram video advert for Guinness. Would you be interested?" I was like, "Yeah, of course."
Yeah.
Without question. And then what I do is I've got this 10% rule, so I try and give 10% back.
Yeah.
So from that, if I can give something, not necessarily monetary value, but some kind of resource from that experience, you give it back and the whole system kicks in. If you hoard it, it just stops. It's as simple as that.
So So, because I ask this quite a lot to let's say your typical street artist, contemporary urban artist. Obviously, where you monetize stuff is going to be through merchandise, limited editions, your canvas works, etc. But the mural, it seems, from my perspective, it's number one, a creative outlet, but number two, it's a form of advertisement for yourself, because when you put that up on your socials, that's something that someone can't really buy, but you get the awareness. So is that are those the two reasons why you do it? It's one, creative outlet, you're being creative, and two, you know that eventually someone may see it, like a Guinness, like a Nestle, or even another artist who want to collaborate with you. Is that why you do it?
With the first and foremost, because it's fun. Without question, it's amazing to be able to, in the middle of London, one of the most dynamic creative cities in the world, you are able to do massive murals and not have the police breathing down your neck on whatever. The second reason I do it is because, it constantly gives. Leek Street alone is a very giving place. It's also it teaches you humility, because when you literally do a 50-meter mural, you take the photos, you put it on social media, and then you turn around and walk away, because literally I've had my murals covered within 1 hour of me leaving.
No.
But that for me is a liberating thing. I really don't mind. I learned very quickly that actually that is why it works. As long as I get the photos in, as long as I connect with people as I'm making it, I have had opportunities to do other murals that are much more long-standing. And the other reason to do it, it's pretty obvious. It's great advertising.
Yeah.
It connects you with industry, but it also connects you with other art. You're completely right. A collaboration. I wish they taught me this. I keep saying this to everybody. Collaboration for me, since 2012, I had no idea how powerful it was until I started collaborating, especially through Leek Street. Leek Street really taught me a valuable lesson. You literally just collaborate with anybody as long as you feel comfortable doing so. If you have an intuitive connection with somebody, just try and create something, because invariably you get an upgrade way beyond your wildest imagination.
Yeah,
literally.
So canvases. I know when we were first talking about doing some business together, some time ago. I think it was when we very first moved into this studio, many years ago. I know you were going into things like scarves, female scarves, a bit like the Hermes type scarves that, which are really, really cool, like silk. I remember seeing some designs, and no doubt things have evolved since then. So talk to us about that, like the merchandise and the clothing. Is that something that is still quite important to you?
It's important, but the narrative is important. So, for example, I can literally take a bunch of designs now and put them on T-shirts and whatever, which is fantastic. But for me personally, to create a body of work that has a narrative to it, because the artwork wouldn't exist without the narrative. So I'm realizing, especially during the pandemic, it's really important for me to actually take stock of what I've done, take stock of my journey, take stock of the reason why I do, and to actually bring it all together and create a narrative, which is what I'm doing, very much so in behind the scenes at the moment. And actually to relaunch, there's this constant evolutionary aspect to what I do, and every artist anyway. But I realized that actually without the narrative, it loses its luster. When we talk about NFTs, the reason why NFTs sell, I've discovered, is because I'm telling people the story of how my NFT came into experience. They love a story. So when I look at my characters, the doodle characters, and I look at Dark Mark, and I look at all the other things I'm doing, I'm like, there was a really cool story here. So that is why I'm kind of, the pandemic's been a blessing in disguise in many different ways. But this is one element I'm doing at the moment, which is actually considering my story. Why am I doing what I'm doing? How did I get to this point? What am I doing with what I'm doing in a way that means that I'm growing as a human being? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And what it does is, you with Woodhouse alone, the story of you up until now is probably more phenomenal than you realize, because it's inspirational. It has, you can say about things that you realize that you could have done better. That's inspiration. That is sharing resources and stuff. That's the juicy stuff. And invariably, it upgrades your game every single time. If you share the story, other people get inspired. And then, funny enough, if you inspire other people, suddenly people start inspiring you and the whole system kicks in. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Hence why I like doing this podcast, because I love getting out the stories that people don't normally hear, because it only takes one person, a young boy, a young girl who might be a little bit lost in life, and they hear a conversation like this, and it might give them that spark or that encouragement to go and follow a dream or even a goal. So you just touched on NFTs, okay?
Yes.
So non-fungible token, yeah?
Yes.
Now, I'm still getting my head around it. I do understand it a lot more than I did, let's say, 6 months ago, but I wouldn't class myself in any stretch of imagination an expert or someone like knows a lot about it. As I mentioned off air, we had a Woodbury House Clubhouse account. And a good friend of mine who's been on this podcast, Jevon, who's a music artist, he's very much into the NFT world. And I know he's got a sort of a side business or a business that is developing. And he was one of our hosts. The other thing as well is I've just qualified with my business partner, Joe, a Sotheby's art and finance, I don't know if you call it a degree, but you get a certificate at the end of it. It's over 6 weeks. And during that process, they will speak about NFTs as well. So wherever I'm looking, Clubhouse, big auction houses like Sotheby's, now you, speaking to you as an artist, there's no getting away from it. NFTs are here, they're here to stay, and they seem like they're going to thrive. But as you pointed out earlier to me off air as well, it moves so quickly. It can move down, it can move up. So for my own knowledge, and also for the audience's kind of education, talk to us about your experience about NFTs and how that's kind of helps your market. So
first to clarify, I'm definitely not an expert because ultimately what I know, like I said to you, I know, my experience today, which has been 4 or 5 months, which seems like an eternity. A time in NFT world goes really quickly, but literally you miss 2 days. If you have a 2-day break, you're like, what the hell's going on when you get back? But ultimately, think of NFTs as being similar to Leak Stream. NFTs thrive off community. NFT community is so much more vibrant than its sister community, which is the real life community. The only thing I think that comes near it is the street art community, because, you have these collectives, you have these crews, these group of graffiti artists or street artists that work together and they form that wonderful bonding collaboration aspect, whatever. But with the NFT community, I'm thinking specifically the one I'm with now, which is the Hicketnunk community. It's a Brazilian NFT platform working with Tezos. It is gloriously maverick. It is gloriously unpredictable. It is extremely creative, and it is very much advocating for each other. So the actual site has photographers. It has people that do sculpture. There's a lot of 3D art, digital art. There's me doing my doodles. There's street art. There is literally everything. You can take any creative element and turn it into an NFT if you can put it into a digital format. But what's happening is they're taking these NFTs and they're becoming really, really creative with it. So the actual scope of what you can do is actually becoming much, much more broad in terms of, like, for instance, with clothing. So at the beginning, around February time, when they did the Beeble thing, I mean, fantastic result. And, an Indian guy invested in a whole load of it. I was reading about it. And so there was this kind of, it's all of these really exclusive NFTs, big artists, But that, in a very short space of time, that now is evolving into a much more, I'm seeing a lot of fashion, as what I mentioned to you. So people, instead of doing really big gun, which they're still doing, NFTs, right, big artists, people are now creating a platform where they can sell NFTs of T-shirts. So you buy the NFT, which is, it's almost like a certificate of authentication, which is another way of looking at it. And they get sent a one-off, very hyper-exclusive T-shirt. And we were talking the other day. I said, can you imagine it if you walk into a shop, a t-shirt shop or a clothes shop, and instead of seeing clothing, you have racks of NFTs, like screens with the image on, and you buy that and it gets sent to you and it gets sent to your crypto wallet. The downside about NFTs, it's very vulnerable to the cryptocurrencies. So I'm getting used to the thing going up and down like a yo-yo. At the moment, this is quite troublesome because obviously China's doing whatever China's doing. And Elon Musk is opening his mouth every 5 seconds and causing ripples. But what's interesting is, especially on the Hikitnung community, is it tends to counter that with, it almost balances that with a new creative outburst. So it is fascinating watching the whole community. There's the ETH community, which is the original kind of platform. But to be honest with you, the best way to learn about NFTs is to go onto Clubhouse, either go to NFT Tips or NFT for Dummies, or literally go into any room that has NFTs as a title, and you learn very, very quickly about the ins and outs of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So have you made your own art, NFT art, and been successful? Like sold on it?
Like really successful. What it does is it's only successful if I plug into the community. It's only successful if I give as much as I get. So what we do on the Hikitnung community, for example, is we initially there was this huge push to give away art. People were literally swapping art, like NFTs, like those old cards you used to get as kids.
Like top stickers,
top trumps, and that kind of thing. And so Ethereum was more collector orientated and exclusivity and kudos. Hikitnung and Tezos, which is the Tezos chain, was more led by artists. So there was this humongous resurgence. Ethereum kind of was becoming much more expensive, and it wasn't easy as an artist. It wasn't easy to accommodate yourself with it because the gas fees to process things was becoming higher. And then suddenly Tezos came along, and the gas fees were negligible. So that suddenly took off. But recently, there's been a new twist in the tale. Hikitnung got hacked. Literally, the whole platform has been shut down. And this is what happens in the NFT world. They're writing it. They're obviously they left the back door open. 7 artists got artwork stolen, from what I can gather, or borrowed, or whatever. And what's happening now is they're recoding everything. This is how new it is. And apparently the artworks will be given back. It was all kind of like just to prove a point. But that's how much of a roller coaster it is,
So how would you go about uploading your own NFT piece of art? Because
if you go to Hikitnung, you get a Tezos wallet, which is either a Kukai or a temple. There's another one, but those are the main. I use a Kukai one. It's really easy. A web-based wallet. You literally attach that wallet to the actual website, and you load up your stuff.
Okay. And
so you could literally, if I could take a picture of this microphone in front of me right now, maybe put the background, put an image or something, make it so it's kind of quirky or it says something, and then within 5 minutes, I've put it up as for sale.
And where do you advertise it for sale?
Twitter, without question.
Twitter.
Wow. Instagram is like a tumbleweed. Very little happens on this. So the reason why Twitter has got the edge is because you can actually chat in time. You can literally launch your say if I did an edition of 10 and 2 or 3 people buy it, I can go, fantastic, thank you for buying my NFT.
Is it like a bid, or is it just a set price?
There is set prices. There is also functionality to have auctioning.
Okay,
stuff like that.
That's interesting.
So you can do the auction. The auctions work really well on Foundation. That's where you get good money. The auctions on Hikitnung work really, really well, but it needs to evolve so it becomes sustainable. At the moment, and some people have sold really well, but because it's the price is lower because it's artist buying artist, but the big collectors are coming in and the prices are becoming much more representative for artists as a whole.
Right. So give us a comparison.
There's so much to... I mean, I can wax lyrical constantly, but I'm noticing as I'm talking that I'm telling the story of NFTs is literally a roller coaster.
Yeah.
You know, you get really good highs, then you get these really, like with Hickenlump being hacked. But in probably 2-3 days' time, it will literally go back up again. Everybody will have another party, and then some little twist in the tail. It's literally like a soap opera on acid. It really, truly is.
That's a good analogy. So give us an example, a comparison. Your canvas works, one of your best ones, one of the doodles that you do.
Yeah.
To an NFT, what is the price difference?
So on Ethereum, that's a really good question. If I was doing it an Ethereum price difference, the cost of the NFT is more than the canvas. If I do a Tezos one, which is Hickenlump, it would be less. But then you're offering, when something is more, it's because it's accommodating more cost involved in minting. Hickenlump is really inexpensive to mint, so the price comes down. So that is one of the trickier aspects. And again, it's right at the beginning. We're only like 6 months old. You know, it's literally trying to figure itself out constantly. But the engagement and the potential to make sales is vastly more dynamic than real world at the moment, especially in February and March. You know, before the China kind of did this thing with Bitcoin and whatever, the sales there were insane, literally insane. In my first 2 weeks on the Ethereum, I made more money than I did in the previous year.
Wow.
That, you know, with the pandemic and suddenly everything shut down, as a creative, I was faced with the reality that I needed to reboot the system, hence why I made my own online gallery, to reboot the system, because I realized that more you give, the more you get back. But the first 2 weeks of my Ethereum experience in March, I made more money than I did in the previous year during a pandemic. So that's how amazing that was. Now I'm making enough money. I'm doing really well. Considering the times we're living in, considering the challenges that creators are facing, I'm doing pretty well.
Well, I mean, this part of this conversation is more like an entrepreneurial kind of business stroke mindset topic, because what I love about what you just said there, I regard myself as a very optimistic person. I'm so optimistic.
I think you are.
I believe I could jump out an aeroplane with no parachute and actually be fine. How as crazy as that sounds, not that I'm going to test it.
Yeah,
but
don't do that.
But that's the kind of optimism I've got, and I think you have to have that in business. What I love about what you said is when the pandemic hit, your words were, just to coin your phrase, is reboot the system, and that's great because things in life will come into our space to disrupt what we're doing. It will take us outside our comfort zone. Now, some people can say, oh, it's bad and it's depressing times and there's so much adversity out there and things are being troubled. Another person, like you're doing, is, okay, this is coming to our space. COVID's hit. There's nothing we can do about it. We've got lockdown. How can I pivot and use it for me rather than against me? And what I love about this story is you've gone into this new medium. I think you call NFTs a new medium. And you're killing it, and it's great.
So if you think of it in terms of like this, if something bad happened to me today, it could be anything, you know, and my initial reaction, that flight and flight response, I have no control over. And long ago, I made peace with the fact that I'm going to react sometimes in ways that I wouldn't really choose to react. I literally have no control over that. So when the pandemic hit, it's really important actually for me to remember this. I had, I think, about a week before the actual first lockdown where I panicked. I was like, what the hell's going on? And everything was coming to a grinding halt. There was a real sense of something really, really bad was happening. Then about 2 weeks into the lockdown, I was able to recognize that I was leaving the fight and flight response. And I was like, so what can we do? You know, what's within your power to make a choice, creative choice, really important. That means that you're choosing to go with the flow of this situation. And that's how the gallery appeared, the online gallery. I've literally created a gallery. I would not have done this if the pandemic hadn't happened. So that choice to embrace this potential and then make the decision to act on it, that's the most important thing as well. You make a decision to act on the choice and to see what would happen. But then ultimately, with the NFT thing, I chose to, believe in it, because initially, like you, I was like, I don't get it. I'm not a tech person. And anything I've said today that actually potentially is wrong, and please, this is my perception, but obviously sometimes it's misconstrued. But most important within that is the idea that when I look at NFTs and I look at their inherent roller coaster nature, I realize that when things are challenging me within the NFT community, every single time I have decided to look at it as an opportunity, it's actually given back something really beautiful.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. Really beautiful.
I think that's such a great lesson in life, that no matter what happens to you or your family or friends or in your circle, I think if you can try and treat everything as an opportunity to grow and evolve and to benefit in some way, and sometimes then benefits are hidden. Something might happen to you which causes a lot of anger, stress, uncertainty. But I think when you can step back out and become calm and methodical, there is opportunity there. So the pandemic hit basically like April, May last year, and it's full force. And the famous saying was, we just need to flatten the curve. And after 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be out. 2 or 3 lockdowns later, and a year and a bit later, we're still basically in it. I know we're coming out of it now. When did you discovered, you done the online gallery, which was
that was 2020.
Yeah, great move.
Yeah.
Obviously, you said 2 things, embrace and act. And I think there's 2 important things. But then you must have had a mindset of, I'm open to new opportunities here, and that's when the NFT world came into your space. Is that right?
Yeah, without question. So if you kind of, like everybody, I started hearing rumblings. I don't know if you agree with this. So you run this Woodbury House, and Woodbury House runs on the fact that people are coming in and they're seeing the space, interacting with you as somebody who is a expert or somebody who's a conduit to connect with these amazing pictures. It thrives on connection.
It does.
So when the NFT community took off and the Clubhouse community, interestingly, pretty much in tandem took off, which then lit up X amount of other amazing potential projects, the whole thing kicked into place. Because as a human being, I need to be connected to at least one other human being doing something creative. If I'm on my own, in my own company, I'm on really thin ice. That's where I suffer from mental health stress. I remember walking around the park near to where I live and thinking I need to move out of the way of this person. And it was such an alien thing to suddenly not be able to connect. But then the whole online thing, and NFT is online, or in the metaverse. Metaverse is a new one. Have you heard of those?
No. No.
So metaverse is the new. It's constantly growing and reevaluated. They have things like cryptovoxels. Cryptovoxels is a metaverse where NFTs are being sold, and you can have your own gallery. Sotheby's, or either Christie's or Sotheby's, are on cryptovoxels, or it's either that or Decentraland. Everything is being created in these decentralized spaces, and people are actively buying NFTs as avatars, wandering into these buildings. I'll send you the link.
Hey, it's mind-blowing stuff. So going back to, let's just say I was the collector, the investor. Well, that's actually a good point. I mean, when people buy NFTs, like from your art, are they buying it, one, to enjoy, or are they doing it because it's another good place to put their money? They might have a lot of money, spare cash. And are they investing into it with the view that in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or even sooner, that it's going to go up in value and they can capitalize on it? So who is the demographic that buys it?
So I would imagine, and this is me, kind of thinking generally about it. There are people who collect because they enjoy the artwork, full stop. And there are definitely people who are collecting as an investment. The more prevalent you are on the scene in terms of, your kudos as an artist, helping other artists, whatever. Certainly on Clubhouse, this is pretty evident, and Twitter as well. it increases your potential to be an artist to collect. You know, it is the promotion aspect works really well because you're online already, you know. So, I think there's pretty much a lot of collectors there who are going to make a good. They got things like derivatives. So they had the Bored Ape Club. Have you heard of that?
No.
Oh God, you've got so much to tell you.
Yeah, I know.
The Bored Ape Club. He sold 10,000 algorithm created images of an ape, but they're all unique.
Right.
And they're selling for hotcakes now. They were literally all bought up, 10,000, and they're all now being swapped. And from my understanding, people are making a lot of money.
Mind
a lot
blowing.
of money.
So, if I could be direct, and I hope you
Yeah,
can,
of course.
you can answer this. What is the most expensive NFT you've sold on there?
I sold one for just under £2,000.
Cool.
Just under 2,000.
And your canvas works. I mean, how much do they typically sell for now?
Well, if this piece was a canvas, it would be just about the same price, actually.
Okay.
Just about the same price.
But what you're saying is you're selling more NFTs in comparison to the canvases.
Yeah. At the moment, most of mine are digital. I can take a picture of a painting, and then a decent photo, and sell that as an NFT separately. But most of my stuff now is digital. So
I was going to say, because is the manpower slightly less or different when doing an NFT in comparison to a canvas work?
So if you consider this, the studio was locked down in the pandemic, so I couldn't do any physical work. I had this thing called an iPad, which I had indulged. I bought one, whatever, but suddenly the iPad became my studio, and I'm pretty sure that's the same for everybody else. And that iPad, whatever you use, it just gave the opportunity for a whole different frontier.
Wow.
You know, an NFT essentially is making a digital representation, an exclusive thing. You know, that's the bit. So beforehand, I could go and take a picture of. So the Mona Lisa is they use the Mona Lisa as an example. There is, I'm sure it's not the real one. It's probably a fake one anyway. The one that's shown in the Louvre Museum.
Yeah.
That's the original. You know, how do we know it's an original? There it is behind the glass. I could go online and take a picture of the Mona Lisa, a pretty good rendition, high pixel, print it off, put it in a frame, and I've got my own Mona, but it's not the original. With the NFT, it creates a contract, a smart contract, that's put on the blockchain, whether it's Ethereum or Tezos, and this is my understanding. I'm not tech savvy, but essentially that smart contract gives the exclusivity for that NFT. So there it is. That's the original. That's the exclusive. That's the one that has the kudos of being the exclusive. So after all these years of digital work, suffering from this fact that actually you can get as many renditions as you want, now there is the Mona Lisa. There it is. It's on the blockchain, as opposed to being behind the glass in the Louvre Museum. So if you have that, it maintains a value, a kudos value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've heard Jevon talk about it. I've heard different people talk, and I'm getting to grips with it a bit. What sometimes I find a little bit difficult to get my head around is the end user again. So if I buy a piece from you, how do I enjoy it? Do I have it up in my house somewhere or my office?
So there's ways. This is a really good question. So you're thinking in terms of a physical appreciation, a physical world appreciation of something digital. So what some people do is they. So for example, I give a free high resolution JPEG of the NFT to people who buy one of my NFTs.
Okay.
So they get the NFT. There it is in their wallet.
Yeah.
You can look at it. Yeah. But here's the actual JPEG, full resolution. You can print it off nice and big, and collectors love that. So they have the original on the blockchain, but they also have a rendition themselves. Other people, you can potentially showcase your NFT on a digital screen in your house.
Okay.
So there is ways around it, and I know people have done that as well.
So I do want to sort of pivot the conversation slightly, because
Sure.
I'm always interested when I'm speaking to an artist, a sports person, or even an entrepreneur, why they do what they do. Like, why do they get into this space? I mean, because typically speaking, being an artist, especially a street contemporary artist who does murals and stuff, isn't a typical route. Well, I'm saying it from my experience. I'm 35 years of age. I know what my mum and dad was like when I was growing up. Get a good job, become a plumber or do something like that, because you're always going to, be in work and you're always going to make money. So to become an athlete or maybe an artist wasn't really drilled into me. So why did you become an artist, and what inspired you to do that?
I've always had the creative strain, the creative
gene,
leaning, that particular way of appreciating the world. But I'm not conventional. I don't fit into a box. I quite happily present myself in a way that means that I can fit pretty much anywhere. But I don't do the 9-to-5 existence.
Yeah.
I my every day, at pretty much every hour, I'm working on something creative. If you said, right, between the hours of 9 and 5, you're going to be creative, that kind of, it's like a Lego with a stickle brick. I don't get it. I don't understand that. The other reason why I'm an artist is because it is great fun. It is a sheer joy to be able to go to your office, which is your studio, sit there and just grab something and start producing magic.
Yeah.
That's what I do for a living. I produce magic. Me, not me personally, I'm a conduit for something much more powerful. If you talk to Richard Hamilton about his work, he would probably describe to you this process where he opens himself to the magic, and then literally it comes through him as a filter, So, I being an artist is a real honor. It's a real joy. I'm incredibly grateful for it. It's a pain in the ass sometimes because it's unpredictable. There is that element. There is a lot, like Tony Robbins would say. I was talking about this the other day. He said you need certainty and uncertainty in your life. As an artist, I love uncertainty because that's the creative juices flowing. It's like, what's going to happen? At the same time, I struggle with uncertainty because if you said to me, what are you going to be doing next year? I'm like, I have no idea. That's why I love the NFT community, because it's really uncertain. But I think also if somebody said there is you can't make a living being an artist, you can choose to try and make a living, to be anything. If you choose to actually switch yourself on as a creative to find the opportunity, that changes everything. You will find it if you choose to see it. That's the thing. I was thinking about this on the train coming in today. At every juncture of me choosing, for example, with the mural recently, there's a 4-story wall. I have a real problem with heights, and they're making me get onto this machine that's going to go really freaking high. And I was saying, oh, do you have a harness? No, you don't need a harness. And I got to the top, and I was like, oh, geez, Louise, my legs were going weak and stuff. And I was like, Mark, either you choose to do this or you don't. Either you choose to actually experience this really difficult situation or you don't. Make that choice right now. Simple as. As an artist, you get to make those kind of choices all the time. Literally, you're walking a tightrope between, doing something or not doing something. Walking into that fear or not doing that fear.
Yeah.
That to me is far more vibrant than, a 9-to-5. Nothing wrong with a 9-to-5, but it doesn't.
That's not your calling. Yeah.
No.
So coming out of school then, did you go straight into becoming a creative? Or?
So no, I did. So I did the whole creative. I knew I had that, but my problem was, and I've talked to you about this before. I got sober in April 2012, and the fact that I got sober was when I truly became a creative. Okay. I had no idea how creative I was until I stopped drinking and doing drugs. No idea. And the moment I stopped, I think it was about 6 months into my recovery, fucking everything came back online. I had literally one of the best things about being sober was I got my creativity, and I became much more aware of this amazing gift that
I want to ask you something on that.
Yeah, sure.
I made this going to sound like a bit of a silly question, but there is a reason.
There are no silly questions.
Why did you decide to become sober?
Then that is not a silly question. So there is a point. If you think of any challenging situation where you're making the wrong choices, but you're choosing not to see the fact that you're making the wrong choices, or you're unable to see the fact that you're making the wrong choices. You know, long before I made the choice to stop drinking, I had gone down the rabbit hole, but I was choosing to not see what I was doing. And then one morning when I woke up and saw the carnage, like real carnage from the night before, I had this moment of revelation, like, you and drink ain't working. It's not looking great, you know. And it was a real gift. But those moments are really fleeting. It is very easy to suddenly miss the opportunity. But thankfully, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm really tired. I don't like who I'm being. I don't like the decisions I'm making. And I chose to step into it. It is probably one of the, it's the best thing you can do, but it's one of the most hardest, beautiful decisions I've ever made, because I had to look at all my things that create fear in me. I'm still looking, by the way. I'm a work in progress. It's you never graduate from the college of life. You never graduate. You constantly learn. That's why with the NFT thing, with it going up and down, I've noticed that actually I'm not stepping off the ride, regardless of how bumpy it is. I'm like choosing to reboot the system on a daily basis at the moment, because it is literally like that.
Yeah.
But reevaluating what my core principles are as an artist, which is avocation, collaboration, a connection, and using my gift that's been given to me to the best of my ability to make sure I'm being a half decent human being today. So, you know, it's about creating principles. You know, there's a lot of stuff that I have no control over, just like the pandemic, but I have these principles which I try my best to do on a daily basis. So when I became sober, I became a decent human being. I actually switched back on.
And like, was the drinking and like, you know, maybe partying and drugs and stuff, was it like binge, or was it every day, or was it every so often, or?
It was to the point. So I with things in general, if you put in front of me now a chocolate cake, I would probably eat the whole cake. And I probably, you know, after the first 2 or 3 slices, in fact, the slices, I would probably take a quarter and say, I'm only having a small slice.
Yeah.
My perception is warped. But as an artist, now and that's where I'm realizing, talking to you right now, the dark Marc energy is the energy that means that I can consume a whole cake. You know, it is so all-consuming. It's so vibrant. But if I use it in the lens of my principles as an artist, I can use it for good.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like any other human being. I am prey. I have this experience with emotions on a daily basis. It's what I do with these emotions that is the point. Either if I don't do anything with them, I end up eating a whole cake or downing X amount of bottles of vodka. But if I actually choose to do something decent, then suddenly what seems like a really dire situation actually becomes a silver lining with a cloud.
So
does that make sense?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
ad-libbing here.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, again, like you're recognizing certain things that you've gone through, experiences which at the time, and some people may perceive as being negative. Actually, it's, you know, look, there's probably some times back then where you didn't have, you know, a great time, but you're using that energy and you're using those experiences to go into your work.
Sure.
I'm just, you know, I'm fascinated with the ups and downs of anybody, because I feel like I've stepped into some of these places as well. And, you know, I like to learn, and I like to learn from other people's experiences. They do say the definition of wisdom is when you look at someone's experiences and you use it in your own life and you learn from it yourself. So like, you know, like going back to the drink and drugs and stuff, it's quite funny because certain artists, including Hambleton, including Jean-Michel Basquiat, including Keith Haring, it was quite known, and it was notorious back in the 70s and 80s, especially in New York, that all the artists, not just one, all of them were on drugs. Heroin was, you know, the choice of of poison back then, crack cocaine, etc. And in some ways, that actually helps their work. And Jean-Michel Basquiat.
So that's a misnomer. I would have to stretch out here. There is this thing called a functioning alcoholic.
Yep.
So there is this thing called a nostalgic vision of an artist being downing X amount of booze or snorting X amount of lines of cocaine. It's when you stop doing these things that your artwork truly becomes the magic that it was always supposed to be. If you look at some of the works, I'm thinking of Jackson Pollock, towards later in his life, the quality of his work was severely compromised, because what's happening, if I chose to drink today, I'm 9 years sober, so I'm definitely not going to do this, but if I chose to drink today, I probably wouldn't spontaneously combust, but the whole system of denial kicks in. You can't selectively, as Brené Brown mentions, I love that woman so much, you can't selectively numb emotion. So if I turn my back against pain, the whole system switches off. You know, I can't feel joy. I can't feel happiness. I can't feel creativity. So if I'm drinking to dull pain, in whatever capacity, I can't be creative. I can try, but it becomes forced. It becomes predictable. It becomes staid. It becomes a shadow of its former self.
Yeah.
So when I switch back on the creativity, this thing called dark mark appears. You know, it's always been there, but it's something that I've pushed to one side because of it's painful. But then I can't. The doodling becomes it becomes really sad. I've got examples of work pre-sobriety where you could see it's trying to be magical, but it's not touching the sides. You know, so there's this weird transition from having a hole in your soul to being a human being, a spiritual being having a human experience. That's what I'm having right now. I'm having a human emotional experience, and I'm using my emotions not only to navigate my experience, but to create with them. So when I get these dark mark impulses, I'm like, okay, let's go. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm pretty much ready to rumble, even though I really have to peel myself out of the bed. The energy to the compulsion to let the stuff come out is huge, huge, all consuming.
I'll tell you why because I remember having quite a similar conversation with you about the whole drink, drugs, creativity, art, that kind of stuff. I think, bearing in mind my knowledge of the art market, even I've been in it since 2014, is really concentrated in Hambleton and his affiliates. And when I watched the documentary of Jean-Michel Basquiat, The Radiant Child, I think in that documentary it mentions that there was a time when he was trying to come off of the heroin, and a lot of art collectors or investors, their perception of that art he was doing wasn't as good as when he was on heroin, quite majorly.
So can you imagine if that was a reality for any artist? The collectors are basically saying, we need you to maintain this drug-induced for us to believe in you as a person. The emotional content there is way beyond painful. Way beyond painful. But there is a misnomer because for me personally, and I know other creatives who've come away from that experience and entered into this thing called sobriety and then really experienced creativity for all it's worth. You know, I still get these moments where I'm faced with the blank canvas or the blank piece of paper or the blank wall, and I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do? I don't know where to start. And it's like, actually, yes, you do. All you need to do is pick up the can or the pencil or whatever implement you're going to make a mark making with and just get on with it. You choose, like I did with the mural. I chose to get on this thing that was 4 stories high, and I chose to start the process because I believe every time I've done it, it's worked. But if I disbelieve it, I'm in trouble, without question. And that disbelief is also another variation of denial. I might as well have a Cinzano and lemonade. And, you know, that's the cut. That is the line that I walk on a daily basis.
Right.
You know, the cake analogy is a really good one, by the way. It really, really is. Because ultimately, you know, as a collector can turn around to me and say, Mark, I really liked your artwork when you were downing loads of vodka. But the thing is, there's no end to that, how much vodka. There is no kind of like, Mark, if you have 2 bottles of vodka, you'll produce great art. As an addict, there is no end to the vodka. So, you know, it's almost like it's like a kiss of death.
Yeah.
But with addiction, it's a slow process. It takes its time. I am so freaking... Talking to you today has made me realize how lucky I am to have the opportunity to really experience life on life's terms. If I turn my back on it, I probably wouldn't be here now. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
It's great that, like, you know, you've gone through these different chapters and you found your calling, and it's just a magical thing to see. Just on that final note then, I mean, you've been through that process. What advice or what tips or what kind of views can you give an audience who might be going through some kind of addiction? It doesn't have to be drinking drugs. It could be something else. How do you recognize that you're in it and stop doing the denial and then use that energy for something really positive?
Without question, the first... The first step in any process is to see it truly for what it is. You know, so if you put addiction to one side and just think about any situation, I would say to anybody in your audience right now, if you're feeling pain, is in any context emotionally, is to stop what you're doing right now and actually sit and acknowledge that pain. Before you do anything else, go, I am feeling angry, or I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling confused, and then ask the question, why? Really ask the question, what is truly going on here? And what usually happens is, I had to ask that question today, you know, because I'm becoming privy to this thing called emotional content, and I'm like, I'm feeling a bit of tension. I'm feeling a bit, and it's to do with the Hicknunk being taken offline. I've got this anger apparently to do with the hacker, because for whatever reason. Once I've acknowledged that pain, I can then make a decision to do something based on the principles that I'm trying to do in my life, whether it's being creative or whatever. So if you're looking at if you're sat at a table right now listening to this, and it's that cliche thing, isn't it? There's the glass on the side of the table, half full, and apparently it's got some ice in it to water down the alcohol. It's like, yeah, whatever. You know, and you've got that bottle of vodka, you know, Tesco's finest. And then you look at it and go, what is the reality of this situation? You know, is this benefiting me, or is it depriving me? Is it causing problems, or is it actually creating solutions? It's to have that open dialogue. It's really difficult because sometimes you can't see beyond the end of your nose, but deep down, you know that something, I knew for a long time that something was wrong. You know, it's not normal to wake up in the morning and be in a bush in somebody's garden and not know where you are. That's not normal. Most people wake up in a bed and it's their own bed. You know, it's not normal to do all these things. But once you actually switch on to the reality of your situation and ask pertinent questions, that actually means that you're being brutally honest. That is a game changer, because then you have choice. You can choose. When I was drinking, I had no choice, none at all, literally no choice. The only choice I had was drink. You know, everything I was doing was drink related. But the moment I turned my back on that is the moment my whole life became literally this amazing experience. It's still a pain in the ass sometimes, but I'd rather feel the pain than feel nothing. In addiction, you don't feel anything. It's literally, there's nothing there. It's the hole in the soul is a really great way of describing it.
Yeah, that is.
You know, you get. I'll give you one example. The typical stereotypical. We'll use an artist actually. The typical stereotypical artist who maybe is an alcoholic is they go to wild. They're really wild. They go to the parties. And they have a few scraps with people. They have loads of sex with people, and then they go to their studio and produce shitloads of good art. That's a misnomer. It's a myth. It's a complete myth, because ultimately, a decent artist, a good artist, is somebody who is really honest with how they are feeling about any given situation, and then sharing that with integrity. That's the other one as well. I've never had so much integrity in my life. And the only reason I have integrity in my creative practice is because I'm not drunk right now. that's a good artist, being really truthful and wholesome with their situation.
And a question which is not directly linked, but I thought it was a perfect one to go on to. Advice for someone that wants to get into the art world.
Yeah.
Because you as an artist, you've transitioned a few times, and you're evolving and you've gone through a challenge. Anyone that wants to become an artist, what are the kind of things that they should be aware of? Things that they should do, how they get inspiration, motivation, how they find their creative angle in life.
So there's, whenever somebody says to me, Mark, you should, shouldn't, must not, I smile, because actually I don't need to do anything. I can choose to do something, but I don't need to do anything. It's all down to choice. So if you are listening to this and you're a creative, because deep in your heart and hearts, you're not a 9-to-5 person, then make the decision to embrace that. It's almost like coming out of the closet. I remember the first time somebody said, well, Mark, what do you do? And I said, I'm an artist. And I said it without crumbling inside or feeling like a fraud. I am an artist. That's who I am. I'm lucky enough to make a living of being a creative. So when you make that decision, you can't go back. You can try, but you literally have entered into this amazing experience that's literally going to blow your mind and cause you no end of interesting challenges. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when you get to it, you will never feel more alive and true to yourself than when you actually stay the course. There will be times as an artist, and it's really nice to remind myself of this, where you will feel like giving up. You'll think, oh, I'm not selling anything. Oh, I'm not getting enough likes on Instagram. But you will always be an artist. You don't need X amount of likes to be an artist. To be an artist, you get on with the job, which is creating. Money, an example is Earl Nightingale, and I think he borrowed it from somebody else as well. Earl Nightingale said in one of his amazing little podcasts, but it was like an old tape, he said, you don't make money, you earn money. People in a mint make money. So when you're creating art, you're providing a service. You're not making money, you're earning money by providing a service, and that service is called art. So if you get on with the job of making the art, and then loving the art. By the way, if you're listening to this, love your art for all it's worth. Even if it really pisses you off, love it still in equal amounts. Because the more you love your artwork, the more people will love it equally. If you're talking about your artwork and you sound as if you want to divorce it, or it's people won't want to buy into that. They love an enthusiastic appreciation from the artist about what they do. They also love the narrative. Without question, narrative, do not underestimate the power of your story. You are on this amazing journey. It's unique to you. You can inspire people in ways that you couldn't even imagine. And all you need to do is tell your story. Literally tell your story. And also, as a creative, be open to the fact that the best way to get inspiration is to collaborate. And the best way to collaborate is just meet somebody and say, let's see if we can collaborate.
Amazing.
Just enter into, I'm just saying those things. It's made me realize it takes a huge amount of courage to be an artist. It really does require you to step out of your comfort zone, but it's worth it every single time. But remind me that of when if you ever hear me talking, because I'm human, I will get feared up. But it's interesting because I can say these things because I'm not talking about myself. But you need a wing buddy. If you're an artist, get one other person on your side who have a similar kind of vibe, because you do need your wing buddies. If you're on your own, it will dry up. It will drive yourself insane.
To round this sort of episode and this interview up here, Mark, talk to us about the next few months, the next few years, the goals and the aspirations and the vision that you've got for Marc Craig and your art and your market. Where's it heading? What are you going to do?
So what I'm going to do, and that's a really amazingly important question. What I'm going to do is literally for the rest of this year, take everything I've done and bring it all together, and to create the narrative, bring that narrative together, and then present something. I've got so many plates at the moment. It's very difficult to focus. That's a typical creative. It's very difficult to focus. So it's to try and bring everything together under one plate. Once I bring that plate, into fruition, is to literally love it for all it's worth, and to inject every ounce of my human enthusiastic nature into that, and then. But the one thing I've discovered as a creative is I suffer from lack of intention, because I've got so many wonderful lights of potential, but I don't focus in long enough for it to do something.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So
yeah.
for the next year, for the rest of this year, I'm going to literally concentrate on making it one umbrella. Bring the street art in, the NFTs in, bring my t-shirt kind of ideas, stories, kids' story, just bring it all together, and to literally have all those elements collaborate for one thing. That would be quite exciting, actually.
That sounds very, very decent.
Yeah.
So, Marc, where can the audience find you and your art?
So you can find me. You can find me on Instagram, which is Creative Thinking without the G. You can find me on Twitter, which I'm really kind of big at the moment, which is Marc Craig Art, Marc with a C. But obviously, it's my website, which is markcraig.co.uk. Also, my Hicketnunk, so you can see all my NFTs, is markcraig.xyz. And then Chopper Chunky is obviously the... If anybody out there is actually, I'll put this out there. If you're an artist and you're looking to try and have a platform to show your work, especially if you can do a group exhibition, get in contact, because Chopper Chunky is free. It is a free service. There's no commission. It is purely the simplest way for me to give back to the community. And I'm all up for people promoting their work and give me an idea for an exhibition.
Mega stuff. One last thing. I've got a mantra, and the mantra goes like this: be happy, never content. Be happy, never content. If I were to ask Marc Craig, what does be happy, never content mean to you? What is your perception of that?
Be happy, never content. If you're content, you're resting on your laurels. Being happy is literally making a choice. Making a choice to be happy given any situation. Being happy is recognizing your power lies within making a choice and understanding that it may not be the right choice, but at least you're living. Not living is not making a choice, and not making a choice, you're being miserable. That is being content is kind of making a choice, but you realize that actually you can stretch it. You can push yourself a little bit further.
I like your breakdown of that, Marc. Thank you very much for your
welcome.
time. I hope everyone listening to this or watching this on YouTube has enjoyed the conversation. Please give Marc a follow. Make sure you invest into his art, watch his journey. If you're getting a lot of value off my podcast, please share it with friends, family. If you're interested to know a bit more about what we do here at Woodbury House, follow Woodbury House, and more importantly, book a meeting to come down to our studio.
I really recommend that.
Be happy, never content, and nice one, everyone, for listening. Cheers.